thank you very much to everyone at SETE for having me here to talk with you this afternoon. My name is Jeremy Smith. I'm the co-founder of Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency, also known as Tourism Declares. And I'm going to be talking about how we can transform European tourism with the aim of achieving the aims of the European Green Deal. I've spent much of 2021 and further back into 2020 in collaborations and discussions with people looking at how we come together as a sector to work on climate action. One of the most insightful experiences I've had in the last few months has been working with the UNWTO and the Adventure Travel Trade Association and two universities in America on the global survey of climate action in tourism, which is the largest such survey of our industry that's ever taken place, speaking with destinations and businesses and organizations all around the world. We asked them a lot of questions about mitigation, about climate planning, etc. But we asked one question that was totally different in response to everyone else. And that question we asked was, how is climate change affecting your tourism operations? And it was an open question. People could talk for as long as they wanted. And I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of words of response. But in summary, it is this. People all across the world said to us, it's more expensive to operate our businesses. It's getting harder and harder to plan. We just don't know when the seasons are. Key assets, our beaches, our forests, our buildings are being destroyed. The tourists are having a worse experience. And our guests are becoming more and more aware of these issues. And this is incredibly important, I think, because this isn't environmentalists or activists or scientists or politicians warning us of what we need to start thinking about. This is hoteliers, destinations, tour operators, travel agents, reporting the experiences of running businesses in tourism around the world. And this is the context I think we need to see the efforts around the European Green New Deal and what it means for tourism, in the reality of our experience of trying to build our industry, of trying to recover. Because in general, what the New Deal says is we need to cut climate emissions by half by 2030 and become climate neutral by 2050. But one of the challenges is that another UNWTO piece of work quite recently looked across national tourism strategies. And while all of them mention sustainable tourism, only about half of them go into any depth. And as I said, I've been involved in a lot of planning in the last few weeks and months. And what it gives me a lot of hope is that one of the key plans that has been, workshops that has been happening is for tourism to develop its transition pathways. And in fact, we're the first industry sector in our continent that has been looking at this. And it's just this week that the final stages of these workshops and reports are coming out. So they're not there yet, but I will be referring to them a little bit while talking. And one last, at the beginning, piece of work and collaboration that I've been involved in, which maybe you have come across already, which was launched in COP26 in Glasgow last month, which was the Glasgow Declaration for Climate Action in Tourism. And there, after several months of consultation and work with the United Nations Environment Programme, led by the United Nations World Tourism Organization, with my organization, Scotland, and the Travel Foundation, we launched this largest ever declaration of commitment for our industry. Like the Green New Deal, the commitments for the Glasgow Declaration for Climate Action in Tourism are the same: to halve sector emissions by 2030, to reach net zero as quickly as possible before 2050, and the need to deliver the plans that will enable us to get there in a coordinated and as effective way as possible. In order to make this possible, to be coordinated and effective, the Glasgow Declaration recommends 5 pathways that anyone who signs up and commits to it designs their plans to follow: to measure the impact of your efforts to reduce, to understand what your impacts are upon the environment; to decarbonize, to reduce your carbon emissions; to regenerate, to see what you can to actually make things better, to restore the natural habitat, to help communities recover. And then, of course, we need to find the finance to enable this to actually happen at an organizational level, at a destination level. There's no point having a plan if you then haven't got the resources to make it possible to deliver it. And we can't see this as something we do by ourselves. We have to come together and support and work together, knowledge share, work with our competitors, our neighbors. We're all in this together. We either all succeed or we all fail. So we have to collaborate. So I'm going to look through each one of these 5 pathways and see how we can use them to help us achieve the Green New Deal. So the first one is measure, to measure and disclose travel and tourism related emissions. This is, although everyone has to do it, it is possibly the most challenging. How exactly do we work out what our emissions are and then address how we measure them? We've made some very significant first steps at COP26 last month. The net zero methodology for hotels, the first of its kind, was launched last month, created by GreenView with Tourism Declares, World Tourism and Travel Council, PATA, and Sustainable Hospitality Alliance on its steering group. It guides the accommodation sector on how they can create the measurement and the plans towards doing this. And Intrepid, global tour operator that's the only one with a science-based target approved for its operations, have open sourced their learnings on how they got to have a science-based target to support tour operators around the world in following their lead. So we've got something happening for the private sector. But if it's hard for the private sector to measure, it's even harder for destinations of any shape or size. Very, very few destinations are measuring the climate impacts of tourism. Valencia, the Spanish city, recently announced that it had measured the carbon impact of tourism at one city level. And that's about where we're at. There's about 4 or 5 countries in the world that have assessed what they consider to be the carbon emissions of their nation's tourism. So we're working to come together to address this over the course of the next few months. We have a destination working group together with the UNWTO and the Travel Foundation, exploring with various leaders how we can do this. And we want to bring as many other destinations as possible together. Maybe some of you are sitting in this room now watching, and you can help do exactly that. And working together with one another, we are developing the guidance, just as you saw for tour operators and accommodation, developing the guidance to support destinations in measuring their emissions. But while we address that granular challenge of measuring our emissions, we need to get on and start on reducing, start delivering targets aligned with climate science to accelerate tourism's decarbonisation. There's a great deal in the new transition documents and workshops around how DMOs and destinations can begin to support the decarbonisation of their tourism. And some of the draft guidance that's proposed is that DMOs could look at prioritising inbound markets that enable them to shorten the distance travelled. Quite simply, the longer the distances that someone's come to have holidays in your destination, the greater the carbon emissions that they are going to bring. It can be more complicated than that, because of course it also depends upon what sort of transport they use to get there and what sort of transport they use when they are there. Likewise, the longer you can encourage people to come to stay, the less carbon emissions related to each person coming back and forth. So how can you enrich the mix that encourages people to come and stay longer in your destination? And as a result, of course, spend more money. How can you shift your marketing strategies to actually encourage and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions per guest night? And how can you use marketing to encourage and promote public and active transport amongst those people who visit your destination? And just as you can market to your guests, how can you also incentivize your industry? How can you work with the sector operating locally and encourage them through promotion, through support, to become, so the greenest are the ones that benefit most from the support of the DMO. I want to look at 2 or 3 little examples. In Helsinki, they've recently, Visit Helsinki brought out an app encouraging visitors to come and spend their time in Helsinki, to how they could use it to find restaurants, bars, nightclubs, attractions. But all of the people who, the businesses that the app supports are those who are making the most effort in the city to deliver sustainable alternatives. So they commit to doing their sustainability, and then the DMO promotes and connects them with inbound visitors. And this could be something quite unusual. This is Rescue, an app in Helsinki that works like those sort of food delivery apps that you use to get local restaurants to send you food or to go and collect it. Except here it works with hotels and restaurants in the city, so that when they've got surplus food that is going to go to waste, people can connect and go and find meals at the end of the lunch cycle, whatever it might be, and get hugely reduced in food meals, taking food waste out of the system and getting the opportunity to discover new experiences themselves. In Bologna, Italy, they experimented with a sustainable transport initiative called Bella Mossa, where basically you used a swipe card whenever you traveled on any form of public transport or used active transport like cycling or walking. And by doing these things, you gained loyalty points, just as you might from taking a flight, but here it was from taking public transport. And those loyalty points you were able to use in connecting restaurants and hotels and shops in the city to be able to get reductions and benefits, thus improving the likelihood that people would support local businesses, get a better experience while using public transport. And it can be as simple as ensuring that bicycle tourism delivers in your destination, that the facilities and the infrastructure are there to support it. It's a huge part of our whole makeup. Europe, bicycle tourism contributes around $44 billion each year, which is about the same as the cruise industry. And you see in the country probably best known for tourism, the Netherlands, they invest 595 million euros a year on urban biking. But the benefits to the country's healthcare through having a healthier population is 19 billion. So sure, there's an upfront investment. There's a vast benefit that comes back to the city, the country, and the destination. And it's essential that we look at these benefits, because it's not all about just reducing negative harm. It's about trying to make things better, specifically through helping visitors and host communities experience better balance with nature. The train network, there's a huge part of the Green New Deal is about supporting greater connectivity on more sustainable transport networks. Picture here of the train networks across Europe. Well, in certain countries, they're already connecting nature experiences with traveling by public transport. So the Swiss Graubünden Pass gives free public transport to visitors arriving at the border of Switzerland if they're going to stay in a national park. In Germany, the Kellerwald Eldersee National Park, there the minor card is free when you stay at accommodation inside the park. And that free accommodation enables you to travel around the park on public transport, enables your bike to go for free on the train, and basically introduces you to a better quality of holiday experience, so long as you are supporting the park and staying in local experiences. And this is one of my favorite and most connected examples of how we can do tourism better to support the destination's regeneration. It comes from outside of Europe, it comes from Thailand, but I think the story travels. This is Sampran Riverside. It's a couple of 100 miles south of Bangkok. The hotel has an on-site organic farm that grows food that you can eat while staying there in the hotel. But the farm goes more than just the food for the hotel to eat. It also trains up to 80 local farmers who come and use this like a school to learn how they themselves can become farm organically. Of course, 80 farmers grow far more food than one hotel can possibly consume on its business. So they've gone out and they've worked with other hotels and other restaurants in the region, creating relationships between them and the farmers so as to guarantee a network of buyers for the farmers' organic produce and increase the offer of organic food all around the region. Then they've gone out beyond the hotels and hospitality businesses into the schools, and they've taken those trainers and those farmers to help the schools set up school organic food gardens so the children and the teachers are eating healthier food, extending the impact wider and wider. This is quite an unusual, innovative thing to be doing. So the hotel now offers guests tours to go and see the school gardens, to visit with local farmers to understand how it works. And then once a week, they bring it all together here on the basis of the hotel. And there, everyone is invited to come together to meet the farmers, the suppliers, the restaurateurs at a farmer's market. In Austria, a similarly joined up approach to connecting tourism and the restoration and regeneration of nature and people's health. This is the Krimmel waterfall in the Hohe Tauern National Park outside of Salzburg in Austria. And researchers studied it, and they reckoned that they could prove that just spending time by the waterfall actually improved people's well-being. And they found that it did, that people genuinely were healthier and happier for time spent there. So they thought they wanted to make sure to preserve this and to promote it. So they launched a brand, a sustainable tourism brand, but it didn't focus on the words like sustainability. It focused on health, the Hoa Tauhan health brand. And they worked with the hotels around the national park. And in order to become part of this sustainable tourism metric, the hotels have to do those same things. They have to remove pesticides. They have to make sure there are no chemicals in the bath, that the linen is organic. And as a result of that, these hotels are able to say that they offer people a better night's sleep. And then because the hotels aren't using chemicals and chemicals aren't going into the river and the waterfall remains nice and clean and pure, nature is protected. And visitors as a result are up 21%. And these visitors are enjoying coming, and because there are more visitors, the villages and the shops have improved and the cafes and the restaurants have improved. Everyone is getting a better and better experience with a more organic, healthy offer. And all of these things mean that it's not just the visitors who are better and getting a better quality of life. Local life is improving as well. Through focusing on protecting a waterfall, they're able to improve the quality of tourism and the quality of the lives of local people. Of course, in order to do any one of these initiatives or any many hundreds and thousands of other ones, you need to ensure the money is in place. And there's a vast amount of money that the Green New Deal will enable tourism to access. And the great challenge we were looking at is how exactly might we access it. Well, it's still early days, but from reading these draft transition documents that are coming out this week and in the coming months, the suggestions of the sort of things that we should be looking at as DMOs is working on projects to focus on best practice guidance, on research for how your destination might attract low carbon tourists, on mapping and surveys of the potential of what you have to offer, of monitoring the sustainability impacts, of running pilot projects to test some of these ideas, of ensuring that you have the capacity by reskilling your staff so that they understand sustainability, they understand the challenges of the climate, and they're ready to address the needs. And then through broad awareness raising across the destination, or through with the tourists, with the staff, with the communities. And then not just thinking about yourselves, but looking to your neighbors, looking to other destinations with similar experiences in other countries, and developing knowledge exchange networks. How can we collaborate? How can we come together with one another to get there as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible? And that is what the fifth and final of the pathways of the Glasgow Declaration, which underpins enabling tourism to achieve the aims of the Green New Deal, is all about. How do we work together to ensure our plans are as effective and as coordinated as possible? So 2 years ago, I was one of the co-founders of Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency, and we launched with one tweet, this one tweet that I sent out in May 2019. And from one tweet, we became a conversation between me and one other guy. From that one other guy, our conversation became 14 tour operators who declared a climate emergency in January 2020. That has continued to grow. We're now 420 members spreading across the world. I think there's about 70 countries represented across the world, all making the same commitments to collaborate on tourism climate action. But we've done all of that as an unfunded initiative of volunteers, and we knew we needed to build and to scale, and that's what expanded our collaboration into working with the UNWTO, the United Nations Environment Programme, Visit Scotland, and the Travel Foundation to develop the Glasgow Declaration for Climate Action in Tourism. And we launched it, as I said at the beginning, just 5 weeks ago in November at COP in Glasgow. And when we launched, having only been open for signatories for a week, we launched with 300 launch partner signatories. And a month later, we now have over 450 destinations, companies, supporting organizations from all across the tourism-specific world coming together to say we will share the same approach, build the same frameworks, and address tourism in a collaborative, science-based way. And you can see DMOs, national DMOs from Portugal, Scotland, Norway, the Netherlands. You can see regional DMO networks such as Nextdoor, the European Regions for Sustainable Competitive Tourism, or CPMR that spreads across peripheral maritime regions across Europe. City destination bodies such as Valencia, Gothenburg, Barcelona, Bilbao. I won't read them all out, but all of these various organizations working on bringing together travel agents, tour operators, working on sustainability issues, certification schemes, right up to and including the WTTC. And then the last two names there on the list, I wanted to say there's hundreds of private sector organizations, but when we look at how we can connect and how we can expand and collaborate, the fact that Deutsche Bahn, the German national rail, has signed and committed to the Glasgow Declaration, and when doing so instantly introduced a new fare structure to support business travel, to encourage its 1,000 most prolific business travel customers to take more transport with them. And secondly, Euronews, vast media network, has now prioritizing in its travel coverage, it's prioritizing signatures to the Glasgow Declaration for who it will talk about when it talks about tourism. So what I wanted to say is this is how we do it. We come together and we collaborate with people who we never imagined might be our partners, because that's what we want to do. And I hope that every one of you will go away and think that maybe you can find a space for yourselves inside of climate action now. And if you want to find out more, please look at any one of these 3 websites, contact me directly. I'd love to have a conversation and see many, many more Greek destinations come on board. Thank you very much.